At around 11 p.m. on August 21st, 1955, 8 adults and 3 children walked into the Hopkinsville, Kentucky police station. They were visibly shaken. Several were armed. They'd just spent 4 hours, they told the officers, in a firefight with small, silver, glowing creatures that had the farmhouse surrounded. They'd shot at the creatures repeatedly with shotguns and a .22 rifle. The creatures wouldn't stay down. When hit, they made a metallic pinging sound and floated back upright, like inflatable toys in a swimming pool. They wanted help. They wanted the police to come out and deal with whatever was in the yard. The ammunition was running low, and the creatures weren't losing interest. 4 city police officers, 5 state troopers, 3 deputy sheriffs, 4 military police from nearby Fort Campbell. 16 officers from 4 agencies drove to the farmhouse. They found shell casings everywhere. They found holes in the walls and the screens. They found a family that had clearly been shooting at something for hours. They didn't find any creatures. Kelly is an unincorporated community in Christian County, Kentucky, about 7 miles north of Hopkinsville. In 1955, it was farmland, tobacco mostly, the kind of place where the population's hard to pin down because nobody's bothered to count. The farmhouse belonged to Glennie Lankford, a widow. She lived there with her children from 2 marriages and their families. Her son, Elmer, known as Lucky, lived there with his wife, Vera. Another son, J.C., lived there with his wife, Aline. Billy Ray Taylor, a 21-year-old from Pennsylvania, was visiting with his wife, June. 11 people in total, 8 adults and 3 children. Keep the guest in mind. Of the 11, Billy Ray was the only one who didn't live there, and the one who'd noticed something was wrong before anyone else did. Not the cause of what followed, just the first to look up. It rarely pays to be first. By every account anyone bothered to collect, the family was unremarkable. They weren't drinkers. Glennie Lankford told investigators she didn't allow liquor in the house. No history of mental illness. Tobacco farmers who went to church and minded their business. You might guess what they reported that night was unusual. August 21st was hot, and the family had gathered at the farm. No television, no telephone. By modern standards, they were isolated. By the standards of what was coming, badly outnumbered. Everything we know rests on 2 things: what they said happened and what investigators found afterward. The nearest military post, Fort Campbell, sat 15 miles south on the Kentucky-Tennessee line. Make of that what you will. It started around 7 p.m. Billy Ray Taylor went out to the well to draw water. He came back in a hurry. He'd seen a bright light streak across the sky, he said, and drop behind the tree line west of the house. Nobody took it too seriously. Billy Ray was a guest. The countryside was full of shooting stars. Nobody went outside to check. In hindsight, that may be the only correct decision anyone made all night. About an hour later, the dog started barking. Then it crawled under the house and stayed there for the rest of the night. The dog was the first to respond to the night's events, and arguably the most rational. Billy Ray and Lucky Sutton grabbed their guns, a 12-gauge and a .22, and went to the back door. In the yard, maybe 20 feet off, stood a figure. What they described in the days after ran like this: 3 to 4 feet tall, oversized head, pointed ears, long arms ending in claws, glowing yellow eyes, a silvery shine over the whole body, not like clothing, like the surface itself was giving off light. It was walking toward the house. Not running. Walking. With its arms raised. Billy Ray shot it with the .22 at close range. The creature, according to multiple witnesses, did a backward somersault and then righted itself. It didn't appear to take it personally. It didn't fall. It didn't bleed. It moved back into the darkness. Moments later, a similar creature, or the same one, appeared at the window. Lucky fired through the screen and it flipped backward off the sill. They ran outside. It was gone. Another one sat on the roof. Billy Ray fired. It floated. The witnesses were firm on that point. It drifted off the roof, settled in the yard, and walked away. This went on for about 4 hours. The creatures appeared at windows, they appeared on the roof, they appeared in the trees. At one point, Billy Ray stepped onto the porch, and one of them reached down from the overhang and grabbed his hair. The others hauled him back inside. "Shoot one," witnesses said, and it made the same metallic ping and tumbled away. Then it came back, or another one just like it. Either way, it didn't improve the evening. By 11 p.m., the family had had enough. They piled into 2 cars and drove the 7 miles to Hopkinsville at speed. They reached the station in what the desk sergeant later called genuine terror. 11 people fled their own home. That's not a prank, that's a retreat. The man who met them was Police Chief Russell Greenwell, who'd handled a rowdy Saturday night or two in his time. 11 people, armed, breathless, stone-cold sober, all telling the same impossible story without tripping over each other's details. That last part is what moved him. A liar embellishes. A frightened person just repeats the thing that frightened them. He looked at a room full of the second kind, and he sent everybody. The officers searched the house, the yard, the outbuildings, the fields. They found plenty of signs that someone had been firing guns. Shell casings in the yard, bullet holes in the windows and screens. Real damage consistent with hours of gunfire. They found no creatures, no blood, no tracks, nothing to suggest there'd been anything to shoot at. The officers left. The creatures came back. The timing wasn't lost on anyone. The siege ran until 5 a.m. A second search, after sunrise, came back just as empty. The Air Force enters the story through Project Blue Book, though how far it actually got is disputed. By most accounts, the file is thin, and there's little sign anyone made the drive out to the farm. The case got filed, as a hoax or as unexplained, depending on which page you read, and that was the end of it, as it often goes. Whatever the file says, it doesn't explain how 11 people, including children, kept up a hoax that meant firing real guns inside their own home for half the night. It doesn't explain the dog. And it doesn't explain why a family that got mostly ridicule for their trouble reportedly never took a word of it back. The year matters here. 1955 was 8 years after Roswell, dead in the middle of America's flying saucer fever. Half the country was watching the sky, and the papers were happy to print whatever it thought it saw. That cut both ways. It put the family story on the national wire within days, and it guaranteed nobody in any position of authority would handle it with a straight face. The explanations arrived almost as fast as the reporters. The light Billy Ray saw was, by the calendar, plausibly a meteor. There was a shower active that August. The rest was nerves, said the psychologists. Excitement, suggestion, a dark farmhouse, 11 people winding each other tighter by the hour. And then there was the Air Force's own contribution. One officer suggested the family had spent the night shooting at a monkey. Escaped from a circus, the story went. Silver in the tellings that really commit. No circus, anywhere, ever reported one missing. The explanation that's outlasted all the others is the quiet one, most associated with Joe Nickel, who laid it out in 2006. The family spent the night shooting at great horned owls. And the owl earns its place. They stand close to 2 feet tall, with a wingspan past 4, ear tufts, eyes that throw back light in a yellowish glow. They're nocturnal, they fly in silence, and they turn genuinely aggressive defending a nest. Hit one with birdshot and it might tumble, right itself, and fly off. Harder to kill than you'd guess. Wings spread, dropping off a roof in the dark, an owl could pass for something that floats. And the metallic ping? Buckshot on a tin roof. It's a good theory. It explains the size, the eyes, the resilience, the hour. It doesn't explain everything. Lucky Sutton had spent his whole life in rural Kentucky and knew an owl when he saw one. The witnesses described things that walked upright, on 2 legs, arms at their sides, which owls don't do. They described a silver glow no field guide accounts for, and they described all of it up close, through a screen, feet away, for hours. Mistaking an owl for a goblin once, in the dark, is easy. Doing it all night is a more demanding proposition. In fairness to the owls, one more concession. The wildest flourishes, the floating, the hair grab, the details that strain hardest, trace mostly to Billy Ray, the excitable guest. His testimony looked, in Nichols' word, embroidered. Which is fair, but it cuts both ways. Strike his account entirely, and you're still left with 10 people who saw something in the yard and ran. So that's where it sits. No physical evidence, no obvious motive, a cursory investigation, and a best guess that doesn't quite close. 11 people fired guns into their own yard all night, fled their home, and told the police a story they knew would draw laughter, and never adjusted a word of it. The explanation is owls. The question is whether you've ever met an owl that could do all that. The next day brought a second siege, the curious. The Kentucky New Era ran the story, and cars came up the lane to see the farm where the little men had been. The family, having survived the night, did the American thing. 50 cents to walk the grounds, $1 to hear the story, $10 to take a photograph. The crowds thinned fast. A parking situation, it turns out, is harder to sustain than a goblin invasion. The case left one more thing behind, a phrase. Hopkinsville helped fix "little green men" in the American language, the shorthand for every visitor that came after. There's just the one problem. The creatures were described as silver. Somewhere between the farmhouse and the phrase, the record got sanded down to a color nobody at the scene reported. That's usually how it goes. The story keeps the part that rhymes. The Sutton farmhouse is no longer standing. For years, the town threw an annual festival in the creature's honor, a gift shop, t-shirts. On the merchandise, the creatures are friendly. The family would probably find this confusing. No creature, living, dead, or owlish, was ever recovered from the property.